So glad you're joining us. And we're going to start soon, and people will trickle in, but most important is to start the program, which is being recorded. And we have this amazing opportunity to have this conversation on the occasion of our 50th anniversary, to have a conversation with some of our past presidents and to honor them. And as I said, this is being recorded so that we'll have, we want you in order of service. All right, we need Yolanda. Is Yolanda here? So this is being recorded. So, and I'm going to ask people not to sit too far over because it's hard to, if you could just, you could just sit over here, just it becomes for eyesight a lot better. Whoops. And more people will be coming up, but most importantly, we're going to record this, and I see we have a lot of people online. Hello, everybody, Zoom people. Did you like the service out there in Zoom land? So Sharon is going to be on chat with all of you, and if there's time for questions, she'll pass them to me, but I'm not sure we will. But the idea is to start this conversation, again, continuing in our multi-generational direction that our programs are going to be having all through this anniversary service. And I'm thrilled that Max Leader and Jessica Balk, who are the co-chairs of our Aleinu program and group, which are our 20s and 30s here at CBST, are going to be leading the discussion, and they have read the book, they have prepared hard, they have done their homework. And I'm going to turn it over to them, and the idea is there are going to be some questions they're going to ask all of you, some questions they're going to ask for some volunteers, and obviously this is only the beginning of a conversation. We're not going to cover everything there is to be covered. But I'm really thrilled to be doing this in honor of this anniversary, and thank you all for being here. So we have one microphone, or you have one microphone, right? Okay, but you're going to have to share it with them when they, I know we have one microphone there, but you're going to have to share it with them. Okay? We're good at sharing.
So maybe 3. So why don't we do,
we're all good at sharing.
You 3 will share a microphone, you 3 will share a microphone, and then you can share one with Michael.
Perfect. We'll be microphone buddies. Well, thank you all so much, all of you who are here in person. Thank you, Sherry. All of you who are here online. I think my family was going to be joining online. And again, it is truly our honor to be sitting here with all of you. And as chairs of Aleinu, it is not lost on us whose shoulders we stand, and the richness of the history, the chutzpah and the bravery that it took to create CBST. And we are truly, honored to be able to continue this on. I know I keep saying that word, but it reflects the way that we both feel in our own conversations and in being here tonight.
And we are the co-chairs of Aleinu, but we don't want to be seen as the token young people. There are tons of young members across the community and tons of younger members that are coming into our synagogue space every day. And so tonight, the two of us are just one of many transport methods to bring this information to the larger community. If you are a person in your 20s and 30s that is joining tonight, or if you know a member of their 20s and 30s, please make sure that you know that you can reach out to us at aleinu@cbst.org to ask any questions and to find your place in the next chapter of CBST's history.
And even if you're not in your 20s or 30s, but this is your first time here tonight, we all know what it's like to be new at CBST. And in reading the book, there were so many stories that started with, I was so scared, and then I walked in the door. And I think that's how my story starts. Max wasn't scared, but a lot of other people's stories start that way. So we remember what it was like, whether it was 50 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 minutes ago. You are welcome here, and please reach out to us. So that said, we have a lot of history to get through, and we could easily spend all day with one of you, let alone all 7. So we ask that you keep your answers as concise as possible, again, as possible being the key word, and really just share the takeaway that you think is most important for the community to hear. Our first couple questions we'll have everybody answer, and then really we'll just be looking for 1 to 2. Raise your hand, we'll make sure you have a microphone, and make sure that we get to hear all of you speak. So prior to 1992, the position was called the chair of the board, and then after Rabbi Kleinbaum was hired, this role became president. So if you can each tell us what years you were in the role, whether it was chair of the board or president, and what you would say was the defining moment in CBST history that happened during your term.
Thank you, and thank you to Max and to Jessica for pulling together this program for us tonight. I think I may be the only past president, past chair, who served in both positions. I was chair of the Board of Trustees, and then after Rabbi Kleinbaum came, I was the president of the Board of Directors. So I think it's a great honor that I served both roles. The story I'm going to tell relates to the most significant thing that happened during my position as chair of the Board of Trustees in the early years in the 1970s. And there was reference last week to our original spiritual leader, who was Reb Pinchas, a Orthodox Hasidic person who came to us and brought great spirituality to CBST. He gave us the kind of service that welcomed everyone and brought joy into the service. He was in the closet. He could not come out because he felt guilty about being gay and Jewish, but he was able to bring the two parts of his life together at CBST. One day he called me and said, "I'd like you to come to my apartment on the Upper West Side." I'd been to his apartment for Shabbat dinner, or as he would call it, Shabbos dinner, but I never was there on a weekday. And so I wondered, why is he calling me up to his home? All the way up to the Upper West Side from my home in Greenwich Village, I sat in the subway and I said, I have been called for an audience with the West Bethel Rebbe. What could he possibly want? Oh, is that? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, can everyone hear me now? Did you hear what I said before? I can repeat it. I don't need to. I had the wrong position. So all the way up, I said to myself, what am I being called for an audience to the West Bethel Rebbe? What is he going to tell me? And the year was 1978. We all know what happened. In 1978, he told me that he was going to be leaving CBST after his 5 years of leadership because he now felt comfortable being gay and Jewish and wanted to move back to his Orthodox Hasidic community. I said, I understand the change in your lifestyle. You have to go back to your original community. And on behalf of our congregation, I'd like to thank you for all the gifts you gave to us. I came back to CBST. I consulted my Yitros, Mark Bieber, and Yehud Berger, and said, what do we do? We're losing our spiritual leader. They said, don't worry. Do what you always do. Form a committee. And the first thing I did was to form what became the religious committee. Mark Bieber, who was a past president who was no longer with us, was the first chair. Saul Zalkin was the second chair. And from that point forward, we were a lay-led congregation with many, many gifts until Rabbi Kleinbaum joined us. We were ready to have a rabbi back with us once again. But I'll never forget that question in my mind. What is it that the West Bethel Rebbe is calling me to his home for? That, to me, is the most significant thing that happened in my time in office. We went from a spiritual leader to a lay-led congregation, and we did very well with it. So I hope everyone understands that message. And I think you want me to pass it over to my colleague, Harriet? Harriet has her own microphone.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me? I guess you can. Okay, here we go. Okay, so I use cheat sheets because I can't remember anything. All right. Okay. All right, so I think it's things you have to understand before you understand what happened to me in my... First of all, the membership of the synagogue in 1973 was 50 members. By 1982, it was 300 members. Also, during that period of time, the volunteer structure was designed for a small group. And as the time went on, it became a larger group that this volunteer structure could not contain. Okay, you also find that in the book, by the way. Okay, what happened was we developed a community committee to find out how we're going to go, what we're going to do, how we're going to develop our group better, et cetera. And Michael, was it you who started that group, or was that Bill Fern? Yeah, okay. Michael started that group, of course. With Bill Fern. And Bill Fern, by the way, engaged a fellow named Dr. Peter Beebe, who sat us all down, as many people who joined that committee. And we sat there and we did surveys, we did all kinds of stuff, and we came up with an idea of what we wanted to do to continue on with the synagogues and the board, and how we're going to restructure. Because my big thing was, and this is what happened to me, how I got dragged into this thing was, I have the very bad habit of thinking I can fix everything. So, but what I don't do very well is watch the politics around it. That has since changed, because I walked right into it, and I really got whacked. I'm sorry to say it that way, but it was really true. So then I'm going to tell you that I was chairman of the board in 1984 at the synagogue, let's see, and the synagogue started to have problems with, before then, the synagogue started to have problems with forces moving back and forth. There were several different groups of people who were some were trying to keep the old structure, some of us realized we had to go forward because we wouldn't grow. And so we worked on that, and let's see. And so the thing about this was that, I want you to understand this, I didn't do this because I was trying to be a female in this job. I did this because I honestly believed that I had something to fix, and I could fix it. And I had a really strong background in organizations that work in ways that can do these kinds of things, and in universities, in various colleges that I worked for, and also various organizations I worked for, and I also, at the end of all this, I started my own business, and that was the kind of thing that went on. So anyway, that's just stuff like that.
That's great. I think you have definitely covered. And Harriet, we will have some more questions that I think you'll be able to share additional moments of time through her history, but just for the sake of time, I would love to, if you want to say one more thing, you can, and then we'll pass it to Yolanda.
Okay, and then I'll stop yapping here. I had a strong vision. I had a strong vision on things that had to be changed. I felt that I could improve the function of the synagogue, and I was naive enough to not understand what I was getting involved with.
Thank you very much. So I served as president I arrived in 1987, and where's Janet Pavlov? Is she in the room? No, it was 87, summer 87. All right, maybe it was 86. And then you know what? What was funny about it was subtract 50 from how old we are. In any event, the point was, we both made it there to CBST because our friend Debbie White, by the way, Zichrona Livracha, she passed, non-Jewish woman, kept saying, why don't you go to the synagogue? Why don't you go to the queer synagogue? I want to go, so we made it. But it was really bizarre. I have to say, it was bizarre. Coming from a conservative background, walking into that Friday night service, we were like dressed, the way you used to go to shul, like you guys are dressed tonight. And it took some time to try to become accustomed to the different prayers and just everything. But it was very sweet. They called us up for motzi at the end. In any event, 1996, 2001, that was the period of time that I was president. And 1996 was a very important year because that's when CBST, when Rabbi Kleinbaum took us on our first trip to Israel. Now, mind you, when we were in Israel, some of us, including me, were plotting away because we were coming back to the election. There was an election here. They actually had elections at CBST. Now we do what normal people do. You appoint people to the board. That's what you do. In any event, Catherine Sull, that name has not come up in decades here, but I have to tell you, that lady really did a number on many people. And you know, you have to tell the good with the not so good. Are you kidding? Oh my God. We'll go out for drinks, I'll tell you about Catherine Sull. In any event, what's that? Well, she should live and be well, or her kids should live and be well. Who the hell knows? Anyway, back to the story. 1996, wait, Rabbi, I have something for you. I have something for you. These are photos. She's going to see her daughters when they were like, you know, this big. Her daughters and Maggie came on the trip to Israel. And it was a really incredible trip back to plotting about the board. So Mike Levine awaited us when we came back that year. And he and Mark Bieber were trying to talk Catherine Sull from stepping down. She was not stepping down. And physically, they had to remove her from the room at Bethune Street to the back office and keep her there while the election was happening. I swear, do you remember that? Of course he remembers. She remembers that, okay. In any event, I know I have a little bit to go. A lot of things happened between 96 and 2001. A lot of things. What stands out in my mind? I'll tell you. Rabbi Kleinbaum on her first day with the rug, she had this rug rolled up. She had it on her shoulder with her red high top. What? No, I know. I didn't, not this rug, no. You had a real rug. In any event, in her shorts, she came in and she set up her own office. She still does that stuff today. All joking aside, we then had, we also hired the first assistant rabbi, Roderick. That was a big deal. Everybody loved his accent. He was a good teacher too. There was a lot of stuff, of course, on the board. It was crazy in the sense that there were too many board members. I counted them. I went downstairs today. 24 board members. And then I saw the numbers go up, 24, and then they went down to 10. And then they went up to 18. So we've been trying, to figure out what the right size of a board is. The end.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, my name is Mike Vine, and I came to CBST in 1992, actually the same year Rabbi Kleinbaum started. I wasn't living in New York. I just started living in New York, and I came to the Javits Center for Yom Kippur, and I was so impressed that I actually had a place to go, and I didn't have to get a ticket like you do at most synagogues. And from then on, I stayed at CBST. I was president from 2001 to 2003, and the two things that I wanted to talk about that were really defining things that happened was 9/11 first. When 9/11 happened, CBST was such a beacon of a place for people to be where when they didn't know what to do. We've seen so many catastrophes recently and in several years, but that was like so huge at that time. The high holidays were happening as well. And I remember a couple days after 9/11 at the Church of the Holy Apostles, we had a gathering where people could just to come and to be in community and with the rabbi and Joyce, and there was just to be with people in prayer. And then at the for the high holidays, because the National Guard was the Javits Center, we were in the basement then. And we had to figure out the space and how to be able to get everyone in. And on Yom Kippur, we had 6,000 people. And we kept bringing out chairs because people kept coming in and people kept coming in. And it was so meaningful because not only just for the membership or the Jewish community, it was all of New York. And it was just such a meaningful, and CBST stepped up not only for the members to find out how people were, people that were displaced from their homes. It was a very monumental time. The second thing I just want to say really short was we also, during the month when I was president, is we hired Ayala Cohn as our assistant rabbi. And it was such a big move from what she had to go through with the conservative movement and JTS, with being able to serve this congregation, putting her own career at such jeopardy. But what she accomplished, and you, from reading her book, you can, and those you know her, such monumental change to not only CBST, but to the world and the conservative movement. And now she's the dean of the Rabbinical School and Cantorial School. So.
Hi, Shabbat Shalom. So my name is Lisa Kartzman, and I was president from 2003 to 2006. Somebody said clear and concise tonight, right?
Try.
Okay.
Try.
So if anybody wants to read about what I did during my time as president, you can find that page that my wife actually reminded me existed in Ayelet's book tonight. She said to me, here, read this before we leave the house. Because, you know, like Harriet, I don't remember too much of it. But it was an amazing journey. I think what I want to say tonight is that I'm an Irving Cooperberg kid. I walked into CBST, and he collected people. And he always had a knack for finding people who he knew needed some special attention. And I think Irving saw that in me. And he was kind and loving and gracious. And when his picture flashes up on a screen, there aren't too many things that make me cry, but tonight was the moment. Irving left me with two things. One of the things he said to me, and I stepped onto the board, several boards, he didn't live long enough to see me become president, but there were two things that he said to me that I'm going to share tonight that I'm pretty sure my rabbi has never heard. One was that a leader of this congregation, two things. You must care for the community. The community must feel you as a leader, as a board member, eventually as president. That means you show up to everything. And I took that very seriously when I became president. I showed up to everything I could get to, every funeral, every shiva, as many meetings as I could to be seen, to be present, and to touch people. If you walked into the high holidays during the 3 years I was president, I was standing at the door and touching every one of you. I did everything I could to make sure that you felt me, because I wanted you as part of this community. The second thing Irving said to me, my rabbi doesn't know this, take care of your rabbi, he said to me. And I made sure that the presidents after me heard that. I tried to spoil you. I tried to love you. I tried to do everything I could just to make you feel not only me, but this community. I hope I fulfilled that.
Okay, is this working? Okay. I'm Eric Rosenbaum. I was president from 2006 to 2009. I also have the distinction of being the last person at CBST ever to not win an election for the board. We stopped having competitive elections after I lost. But the thing I'm actually most proud of during the 3 years that I was president was that there was a small group of people called the Mishkan Committee, and they were hovering over this nest egg of $1 million that we had in this thing called the Premises Trust Fund, with the idea that we were going to have a building. And so the Mishkan Committee was traveling around New York looking at synagogues to buy for $1 million. And it occurred to me that $1 million probably wasn't enough to buy a synagogue, and that's why, for all of the looking that they were doing, they hadn't found anything yet. So I said, you know, maybe we're not going to buy a synagogue this year, but we could start to create the infrastructure that someday we'll be able to have a synagogue. And I remember something that Rabbi Kleinbaum said. I don't think you remember who said it first, and I certainly don't, which is that people have this weird character trait of over-promising what you can do in a year and under-imagining what you can achieve in a decade. And I just want to say that we opened this building in 2016, 10 years after we started the capital campaign and started to build the infrastructure to have this synagogue.
Hi, I'm Gregg Passin. I was president from 2017 to 2020, so just preceded Sabrina. But I first came to CBST in 1982 with my first boyfriend, Stuart. He brought me here, and then we went to Marie's Crisis to sing Broadway songs, which is still an idea of a great Friday night for me. I guess what I remember most, the thing that strikes me most that I remember was the Tree of Life shooting. I was upstate. My husband and I went up just to spend a weekend upstate, and I got a text from Cindy Rizzo, who was on the board at the time, saying there's been this shooting in Pittsburgh. And I thought, oh, that's really bad. And then, like, it took me a couple minutes, like, oh, crap, that, like, really has implications for us. It really took me a couple of minutes to really realize that. And on the way back into the city, I remember texting and calling with Yo and with the rabbi about what are we going to do, we've got to respond. And I guess that really was the start of this sort of state that we're in right now, being concerned about being in Jewish places in the US the way Jews around the rest of the world have felt for a very long time. And I guess perhaps we didn't think we were going to get in that position, but we are now. And I still think about that when I walk here and I come here and I think about our presence here.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for digging down and pulling those stories and sharing this rich history of the synagogue that hopefully everyone in this audience today and on the live stream is starting to piece together. As each person was telling different stories, I heard some people laugh. I saw some people a little bit confused. And that is just one of the special things about this congregation is every day, every time that I enter this space, or most people enter this space, they find one little piece that is that rich piece of history of CBST, and there are so many different things that can happen. When I joined in 2019, I didn't know anything about CBST's history. I showed up as a person that was figuring out my queer and Jewish identity. And as I've come to services, as I've joined different programs more and more, I have started to learn how incredibly rich this history is. And so we're holding this conversation tonight and every single month for the rest of the 50th year anniversary to show this idea of an intergenerational synagogue, a place where you can come in for the first time, or you can come in for, how many times, Michael, do you think you've been in congregation?
50 times whatever.
50 times whatever.
Remember, I have been here for 50 years of my 80 years, so that's a lot.
A lot of times. So whether you've been here that many times or it is your first time, I guarantee that you'll be able to find something special in this synagogue. I grew up in a congregation that I knew no history and I never felt connected, but learning the history of this synagogue, I feel very much connected. So this is a question that we're gonna get two people to answer. And for the next couple of questions, we will also ask for just 2 volunteers so that we can keep things moving. And the question is, what do you believe is the role of a synagogue in the larger LGBTQ+ and Jewish communities, and how has CBST fulfilled this role? So we'll have, if 2 people want to answer that, concise as possible.
If you don't mind, I would like to take this one, because the history of CBST is a phenomenal part of the LGBT community. Don't forget, we started as the gay synagogue. A decade later, we were the gay and lesbian synagogue. A decade later, we were the gay, lesbian, and bisexual synagogue. And if you want to hear about a controversial meeting, adding bisexual was very, very challenging to a lot of our members, but we did it. As time progressed, we became the LGBTQ synagogue, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, and of course, let's not forget our family and friends. I think the magic of CBST, and this is something Rabbi Kleinbaum has frequently mentioned, the magic is our ability to change and change and change over time so that we become the Jewish community that accepts and welcomes the widest range of LGBTQ members of any congregation. That's the magic of CBST.
Thank you.
How many of you have ever seen the It Gets Better videos? Remember that? Dan Savage started that. If you watch those, and you can spend hours and hours watching all the videos that are out there of that, it's remarkable to me how much has gotten better. But the one thing that I think is still the same is the it. The moment when a kid realizes for the first time that they are different in some way that they don't understand and that no one can explain to them, and feels incredibly isolated and alone. And I think CBST needs to exist, not just for the gets better part, but until no kid has to feel that it moment of, oh my God, I'm different and it's dangerous and I feel alone.
Thank you so much. Eric, I think that leads really well into one of our questions, which is that CBST means a lot of things to a lot of people. And we read in this chapter that personal connection can often lead to heated conversations and making leadership decisions and organizational decisions more difficult. How did 2 of you, concisely, how did you balance the non-emotional parts of decision-making with holding space for the emotional and identity-driven aspects of the community?
Oh, no, that's not, here, take it back. I'm sorry. That's a really good question. And actually, that was an important principle for me, personally, because I think Eric said it before, and Lisa, it's about the community. It's not about me. It's not about you. We're the leaders. What is important is to always try to make decisions, balanced decisions, but for the entire community. And it's a very, very important thing. And this has been a difficult community to make decisions in because everybody that's on the board since 1973 is shaking their head now. No, but seriously, I don't know how we all have the bandwidth. It's incredible. It is incredible. But over the years, I have to say, I've learned that it's okay to say no. You know, just saying. And I think it's healthy. And having some boundaries. But the beauty of being able to separate yourself as a leader and understand what the community needs and be able to negotiate and listen to everyone and make a decision.
I'm going to add to that. One of the things that my time as president taught me is diversity is strength. This place is filled with diversity. Disagreement is also a good thing. And one of the things that I enjoyed with my board is that I think each board member had the freedom to express themselves and know that it was okay. We didn't have to agree on everything. Every vote didn't have to go my way. It was really okay. I never felt as though I had the answer to every question. I shouldn't. I always felt as though I had a board that was going to be honest and transparent with me. And if we walked away from what I felt was an important decision that didn't go my way and it was a no, that was okay too. Because, as Yo just said, I'm not the only leader. I had a board that was leading with me, and they had to feel good about walking away from the table as well. So, in many ways, doing what I do today professionally, I'm still leading the same way, and I say that to the people that report to me. I don't have the answers to everything. I have life experience, but there's always going to be somebody sitting at the table who might have a really smart idea, and it may not be mine. And that's okay, because we all grow from that.
And I think that leads into our next question too, which is a combination of where do we uphold the structures and the rituals that we still see today? Some of the things that stood out to me were the variations on Saturday morning services, or the structure of having a Ba'al Tefillah, a service leader, and a drasha on Friday nights. These are integrated into the fabric of CBST. How do you navigate what to change and innovate and what to maintain?
So it was reflected a lot in the book, in Rabbi Ayala Cohn's book, about the different, I think we were talking about the chapter 1, or actually in this chapter, about the different kinds of minyans and type of services, and trying a mincha service and a Shabbat morning service and all that. And all that really is based upon what you try to do is get what is the need of the congregation. What can we do? And some of it is based on numbers, some of it is based on the response you get. I know in recent years at CBST, there's a lot of surveys that are done or get member input into what works and what doesn't. When we have an assistant rabbi come in, they sometimes develop a new Saturday morning service. So Rabbi reported yoga, Rabbi Werber's is a musical Torah study group, and you get feedback from the people attending, and if they work, and you build upon what works, and you change what doesn't.
I always have something to say.
We love it.
This brings me back to the feminist minion. There you go, Suzanne, Carol, come on. In any event, seriously, first of all, it depends, what year something is happening. Who are the people here, and what are the politics of this synagogue? So I remember this quite clearly. Well, when I got on the board, Bill Waller was the president. There were 3 women, Sandy Faddis, I can't remember the second person. It was probably Catherine Soul, myself. So, and Roseanne Leipzig was much involved in the ritual aspects of the synagogue. We led services on Friday night. We took turns, et cetera, et cetera. It was actually really cool because we grew from it so much, and people let you do it, Anyway, so the feminist minion, there was a need. Women started coming, women identifying as lesbians started coming to the synagogue. And it was about the liturgy. It's still about the liturgy. And that's how it began. Conversation after conversation after conversation. And we didn't have to convince, our clergy. We had to convince the board that this was not going to be the collapse of CBST. The women are taking over. That's what it was. Amen.
Can I just add a little aside? I just want to note that my partner, Ruth Play, was the first woman Baltiva, right? Is that the I'm pronouncing? I'm probably not pronouncing it right. I was was brought up in a Reformed synagogue, so right. Anyway, bad joke again. All right, so Ruth was the first person who acted with Mark Bieber. Mark Bieber asked her to join him, and she did quite a few of those Friday night services. And she remembers the story, and this is in the book, by the way. She remembers the story that somebody came up to her and said, "I love to hear your voice, but I still can't get used to seeing a woman on the bema." Just might have pressed it.
Thank you. So we're going to wrap up momentarily, but something that I've observed tonight throughout the service and through all these conversations is the fact that we are all here today, live stream, in person, is not just because of one person. It's from a collective of people, from a collective of presidents, from a collective of community, from everyone that walks in the door, plays a part in continuing the history of CBST. And I think, even we see, all of you presidents are still members to this day and hold, those two pieces. And, when Jess and I have been talking about Aleinu and what the future of Aleinu looks like, we don't see it as just one person or just two people or just events. We see it as a movement, everyone playing their part, bringing their friends, bringing a program to the table that we can help facilitate through community. And so for the last question, this is going to be one for everybody. How do you see the future of CBST, and what advice do you have for current and future members of this synagogue?
That's an excellent question. What advice do I have for the future? Don't make radical changes to what we have now. Change should be incremental. Change should be coming from the members of the congregation. It should come from the clergy. It should come from the lay leadership. But it should always be incremental. That is how we have become a successful synagogue, slowly over 50 years, evolving with time. And so I give this advice to our younger members and to existing members right now. Always allow change to occur, but make it natural, make it evolutionary, not revolutionary.
So I've always believed in consensus, and that's probably the hardest thing to get on a board or anything like that. I'm sometimes successful at doing that, and sometimes I'm not. It's a lot of work. You have to call a lot of people and get them to talk about what they think. And so that's to Mike's point. I think that helps to develop the evolutionary way things get changed is through the use of consensus. Other than that, it's, boy, I don't know what to say. Question one more time, I'm sorry.
So the question was, how do you see the future of CBST, and what advice do you have for current and future members?
Consensus is my advice, and what I see is that we're living in very bad times, I think, not as bad as it could be, thank God, but they're not good. I think we have to stay close to each other. We have to keep in community. We have to share our concerns with each other. And we just cannot move away too far from that and not, go flying off in space someplace. Okay.
So let's see. What I see is kind of like a continuum, and in terms of the entire community, sort of like an ebb and flow, because it's our responsibility. We're the Alta Cockers over here. I never thought, here we are. Anyway, the point is what you two are doing is so important. The children that are in our school are so important. And it's not just the LGBTQ part of it, but it's the part, and I remember this from 31 years ago, which has to do with opening up how we practice being Jewish. I never in a million years thought I would be able to accept it. And it takes time. It takes time. So I think the recommendation is basically to make sure that you keep bringing new people in. Young people, super important. And teach us all what, the new trends are. Because it's really pathetic.
I don't know. Jess and I are starting to get a little further past the trend.
Even we're old by Aleinu standards these days.
So CBST has really, from day one, has always been an open door, and where everyone is welcome, everyone is encouraged to and be welcoming to people that come in. And in the next 50 years or however long, you need to continue that practice because that's what makes CBST special and unique. And also to encourage people to participate and to fundraise and do all that by making them feel like they're important, like we're all important as a community. There are people that have a lot of talents in terms of skills, but everybody has something to contribute. And I think the success will be in making everybody feel that they can contribute and they are important and that everybody should be reached out to.
What you're seeing tonight is that each of us, as past presidents and the current, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Each of us was very conscious of that. CBST is going to continue to evolve with time. It's inevitable, right? We all made changes as leaders. Our boards made changes. Changes are still happening. And the only thing that I want to say, because it's really ditto to all these presidents that came before me and what they just said, I agree. Here's one thing I'm going to leave you with. We all have to dig deep. And I know that we've heard it from our rabbi, we've heard it from the current president. When I say dig deep, we all come here, we enjoy this place. We love being here. And I'm not here that often anymore. My wife and I don't come as often as maybe we should. But you got to give for this place to exist. Giving is not just time. Giving is money. Because we love this place. So think about that. And think about it all the time. As I sat here tonight, and I know that my mother's Yizkor is next week. I won't be here, but it was a reminder to me that I must give. I'm going to leave you at that, because I'm still a past president.
Oh, boy. If the people who make predictions about the future only got paid on the accuracy of their predictions, that profession would die very quickly. And I've done a lot of strategic planning in my career. And what I've learned the value of a strategic plan is not in the accomplishment of everything you set out to do in the plan. It's that thinking about the future prepares you to respond when things don't go as planned. And that's the value. When I think about the future, the purpose of community is to be a community. That it isn't always about how much bigger it gets or how much grander or how much money it raises. It is in the act of existing for each other. And I just think that's just the foundation. Sorry, I'll quit.
Well, I was going to say something very similar to what Eric was saying. I think about, and I think I've been to services since December, and so I walked in tonight and like, oh, but like here's, oh, part of my community. And hello, 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 how are you? How are you? A lot of people who know who I am from being president, who I don't really remember who you are, but I hope I sound like I do, because I know who you are, but I just don't really know your name. But that sense of community, of being welcomed and welcoming is just, that's what CBST is for me and what's important to it. I think, the change that's going to happen, the most profound change is when we get a new senior rabbi. And none of us know how that's going to change us, but it's going to change us. And it's probably going to be like, we're not going to realize it until it's there. It's going to be very subtle, and then one day we're going to be, oh, this is different than the way it used to be. And hopefully it feels natural and it feels organic to the community, and in line with what everyone else was saying, responding to our needs and what this community aspires to be. But we're not going to know what it is or be able to predict it until it's there. And it's exciting. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you all so much.
We're just gonna wrap real quick. and just to close, thank you to all of you for bringing your perspectives as not just past presidents, but as members. And thank you to everyone in the audience for being a part of the continuous fabric that is CBST. If anything here made you excited to learn more, there's actually a full textbook of CBST's history, which you can purchase in the office. And as I've been reading the book over the last 3 weeks, I have been going through a journey of my own, even coming here since 2019, learning little nooks and crannies, ways that members have changed laws, ways that things that have been done in this community that would have never been done in any Jewish space. And it's thanks to everyone up here. It's thanks to everyone in this audience, on the live stream. And so just with that, know that your presence in this community is exactly what this community needs. And I always say, if there's one thing to do, Shabbat services happen every single week, without a doubt. For Aleinu-aged members, we are encouraging that to be the program, to come to the weekly Shabbat services, because I know, as all of us felt tonight, feeling a full sanctuary just validates the existence more than anything, and allows us to celebrate our identities as Jewish people. So thank you everyone so much for being here tonight.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Max and to Jessica for preparing so hard and beautiful questions, and to have this small but very deep conversation together. And I always say one of the things that makes CBST the most queer is the deep and profound relationship between clergy and the lay leadership. And I look at all of you, and from this side down, I mean, Harriet, you're the only one I didn't work with, because Michael did become president for a year, I think, while I was here, right? So it might be the most queer part about CBST, is how deeply connected and how much work happens between the lay leadership and the clergy. And it's been my huge honor to work with all of you. And thank you to the two of you. Happy anniversary, everybody. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, everybody on live stream, on the Zoom.